All right, it is 5 minutes past the hour, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everybody. Great to have you all join us for this webinar. If you have not been doing that already, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat window with your name and your institution. Our session for today is titled "Being a Rural Librarian in COVID Time." We're really structuring this more as a conversation. We joined by three brilliant panelists who will be guiding us through a few questions as we go. They will give some brief statement to set the stage for the conversation, but most of this will really be taken up by question and answers with the panelists, but also questions that you are able to put in the question window. So as we go on, please keep notice of the chat window there. Feel free to have a conversation, back channel conversation. But if you want to ask questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A window as well as we go along. So today's agenda, we'll just do a quick brief overview of what we're trying to accomplish here. We'll introduce the team and the panelists. We'll have a really brief presentations and then some question and answers and a wrap-up session. So this conversation is part of our Spotty Rain Campaign project, which is an NSF-funded project where we're focusing on sharing resources for managing drought risk and encouraging community participations to volunteer in drought monitoring. The reason and the way that librarians fit into this is that part of our project has been really trying to figure out a way to collaborate and work with librarians, especially in the rural areas. So we've been having conversations around that topic. Michael Hall, who is also on our advisory board for our project, was part of this conversation when we're trying to figure out how do we go forward with engaging with our stakeholders and partners and librarians around this time when there's so much uncertainties and changes happening in the world, especially starting with COVID-19 earlier this year. All of us have had to make amendments to our processes and ways of being for the last few months. So we're hoping that we can engage in this conversation about how to move forward and just share experiences on how many of us are doing that. This is my team that I want to introduce right now for the grant. We have Dr. Nicole Colson. Myself, I am Tudoleni Asino from the Educational Technology Program. And then we also have Clement Abai and Ayo Ibukun who are completing up our team. So the purpose for today's webinar really, as I mentioned earlier, is for us to engage in a listening session to explore how COVID challenges are impacting all of us, but also to think through how specifically Oklahoma State University might be a partner to our librarians in the state and beyond Oklahoma. So with that in mind, if you are a community partner and not a librarian, at the same time as you're introducing yourself, also you might want to add your contact information there so that people can know which partners and experts that we have on the session that they might be able to engage with. So our panelists here we have, I am bad at introducing people, so all I usually do is say names and then leave it up to the panelists to fill in the rest. That way I don't leave out anything because they are very accomplished. And we have with us here Michael Hall, who is an executive director at Southeastern Public Library System of Oklahoma. And we have Tanya Baldwin, who is with Hazel Cross Public Library in Thomas, Oklahoma. And then we have Karen Gilliland from Watonga Public Library, who was gracious enough to join us at a moment's notice after one of our other panelists, Terry Crawford, wasn't able to join us. So Karen, thank you very much for filling in on that. So we're going to start off just really by quickly having each panelist introduce themselves and maybe give us a few remarks to set the conversation. So with that, why don't we start off with Michael?
Again, I'm Michael. I'm the director at Southeast Oklahoma Library System. We are a very rural 7-county library system headquartered in McAlester, Oklahoma. We have 15 libraries, and all but one are in communities of less than 10,000 people. And really, we have some counties that have less than 10,000 people as well. So we are the definition of rural. We closed in late March because of COVID. And for the last month or so, we've been doing curbside service exclusively. We won't start allowing customers in until looks like next week. We'll allow that in some of our libraries because we still have a couple of counties where the pandemic is hitting pretty hard. Now, besides the obvious reduction in service, the impact that we're the most concerned with is revenue. And my perspective is going to be from an admin level. So I'm glad Tanya and Karen are able to join us because they'll speak to the more day-to-day side. But being a library system in Oklahoma, we do normally have a pretty stable funding mechanism through an ad valorem tax. So we don't typically sweat when there's an up and or down in the market. But this time we're a little bit worried because we don't know how our collections will be impacted in the short term. Long term, we don't know how everything that's going through the economy will affect property values. So we found ourselves enacting some budget cuts and instituting a hiring freeze as a precautionary measure. And unfortunately, it may be close to a year, I think, before we'll be able to measure the true effect this pandemic has had on our funding. Right now, our biggest challenge is balancing staff and customer safety with the need as a public entity to be providing service. So almost everything around us is opened up and people left and right are ignoring social distancing. But we're holding firm with a cautious and very conservative approach, despite some angst and criticism among the general public to get open. Because of our geographic size, we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to deciding when to open. And then we're thinking at the same time, what are we're rethinking our service, our procedures, coming up with new procedures. We're buying new equipment, new supplies, and our number one goal is to keep staff and customer safe. So that's my intro.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Tanya?
Hello, everyone. So I'm the library manager at Hazel Cross Library here in Thomas, and I've been doing this for about 10 years. And I am also part of the library system. I'm with Western Plains Library System, and that includes 7 libraries, and we also run a bookmobile. I like to say, the definition of a rural library. We're situated about 90 miles west of Oklahoma City in the western part of Oklahoma. If you've never been to western Oklahoma, it's pretty flat, lots of wheat, and lots of wind. We have a population of about 1,200, so we're a pretty small community. My library consists of me and 2 part-time workers, and our library is very active in our community. Our community really supports us well. We average about 8 to 10 programs a month during the regular season and about 16 to 18 during summer reading. So not having any programs in the library right now is culture shock for us. Being a rural library, it's imperative that we keep engaged in our community and provide the best technology and information and service we can to our patrons. And it's been quite a learning experience on how best to do this and keep our patrons safe and our staff safe during this time. But I feel like we are doing everything that we can and the best that we can at this time. So that's mine.
Great. Karen?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Gilliland from Watonga Public Library. We are out in Western Oklahoma also. We're about 65 miles west of Oklahoma City. We have probably around 2,500 people in Watonga. I am the children's and youth librarian here and have been for 8 years as of yesterday, actually. And I taught school for 30 years in the elementary. So I do have a background of education when I came. Our circulation, this has affected us. Our circulation is down. And we started the curbside service right from the very beginning. So we were trying to keep that circulation going, but people are staying away, even we've been open back up now to 3 full weeks, I believe. We were closed for 2 or 3 weeks. But then we opened back up and the people are just staying away. They really are. And we do miss them very much. So, and I know we'll talk about some other things here, but it's kind of the same with Tanya. We have programs all the time because we are kind of like a hub. We're situated in a park and kids are in here all the time. So we do miss the patrons.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, welcome to our panelists. We're going to go right into some questions that we have. We really want to focus on 4 themes here around programming, digital access, the role of the library, and also community partners. So I guess my first question really for our panelists is, how did you adapt your summer programs?
Well, I guess I'll chime in. Well, we canceled all of our in-person programs. We did that pretty early, and it didn't matter if it was a paid performer or a locally developed story time. We just squashed it because we just didn't feel it was in the public interest to let people come in where they're going to be gathering and hanging out in such close quarters. And then we diverted a lot of the savings from that toward the purchase of various equipment to assist in the production of our own video content. We've purchased some nice video cameras, editing software, green screens, everything that you need to produce high quality videos. So we're now launching our own digital programming, and our local libraries have created takeout programs. And those are little kits that have generally crafts and some other things in it that people can come through the curbside, or when we open the doors, they'll be able to come in and grab and take home and do with their families. We are centrally producing our online programs instead of letting all 15 libraries produce their own. And the reason we're doing that is we feel that we're only going to get one chance to impress our audience, because we have a lot of people, they've never done any kind of virtual programs. We have a lot of people who still don't do much in the way of streaming. So we feel we're only going to get one chance to impress them. So we need to ensure that the quality is the highest we can make it, and that trumps seeing a local face in the early phases. Now, as we work out the bugs, we will expand that and involve local staff more, because we do want people to see some local and familiar faces. But above all, we're committed to doing it well rather than quickly. Financially, we really considered booking performers for online programs, but we decided that for the money we would spend, the crowds wouldn't be any bigger than if we produced our own programming. Plus, we've got a lot of great staff with some amazing skills, and they're turning those into programs for us. So it was a pretty easy decision at the higher level to cancel the performers and not try to do any virtual performers, just to develop our own stuff this year.
Okay, well, we made the decision to cancel all in-person programming also, and CSLP, the Collaborative Summer Reading, they came out with a like an adaptive 6-week programming, and we are using that. And so I incorporated that into the product that we bought called Read Squared. It's a platform that kids can register. I could plug in all kinds of activities and things for them to do. I can put all the things, the activities from the CSLP that I got. They called that Reimagine Summer, I think, is what, or Reimagine Your Story instead of Imagine Your Story. But anyway, I plugged all that into that, and they can check off things that they've accomplished. They can win prizes, log their books in, and things. And I also have take-home packets that they can come by and pick up. Everything has to be really pretty organized and, you know, structured for that. But I have had some positive feedback on that too, where some people aren't just wanting to come in and group around. So they're really thankful that we've done this. And we did go ahead and keep our performers though. We have a performer every week for 6 weeks, and we just reached out to them and asked if they would be willing to record their performance. And we didn't know how that would all work, but it's working. We've had two different ones, and one is ready for next Monday. We put them up for a week. People can go in and click on the link, and only the people that are registered can click on the link, but that's okay. And then we mail them a check. It's a slightly reduced rate that they're giving us for those links. So that's how we're adapting summer reading.
We are pretty much the same. We're pretty much doing all the same stuff that Karen talked about. This year, we're of course not doing any programs in the library. I know a lot of libraries have had a digital or a side where they could sign up online. We have not ever done that. So this is all new for my people. And I have noticed that they're having a hard time changing to that way of doing it. I usually have upwards near 150 kids that sign up, and right now I think I'm sitting at less than 30. So it's hard to get it through to them that it's very easy. It'll take you less than a minute, but it's just something that they're going to have to learn how to do. But we are also doing the performers online. We're doing story times. We're doing the activity packets. Pretty much what I think a lot of libraries out there are doing.
I also will chime in there. We even have our 2 daycares that are in town. This program, Read Squared, has a place where that you can register groups. And this is the first year that our daycares have been involved, and they're loving it. They send somebody up, they pick up, 27 packets. They have something to do at daycare. So it's really kind of, we're going to try to keep some of this even when all this is over.
I just want to throw in, if anyone out there is not keeping an eye on the chats, there's some really good conversations going on out there, and some people sharing some of the things they're using. So please take a look at the chats, and I think you'll be interested.
Yeah, no, I was just, I agree with that. There's a lot of similarity in what the panels are talking about, what other people are doing as well. If I can follow up on all your comments, can you share a little bit in terms of what sort of institutional or financial or customer consideration that you took into account that influence your decision on how to adapt your programs?
That's a tough one, I think, just because I think we're so limited. I think we just accepted early on that the face-to-face was not possible. So, what's the best we can do now? Again, we're more fortunate as a system. We have a little bit different funding and probably a little healthier than a lot of, small city-ran or county-ran libraries. So we were able to purchase some of that equipment, and one setup is really about $4,000 for what we did. But, that's, new computers, top of the line cameras, some other audio equipment. I'd have to go get a list to email you what all was in it. And unfortunately for us, we know we're going to miss out on some people. Now, we are trying to work with some schools to where they'll come and pick up some of the takeout stuff. but we don't have very good connectivity out here. So I know Tanya said, she went from 150 to 30. I think it's going to be worse than that for us because we just don't have as many people as what even Western Oklahoma has with digital access from home. Part of that's financial, but part of it is just the infrastructure. When you get into our hills out here in Southeast Oklahoma, there's just no way to even get some of the wireless internet. It's just, the library is a lifeline. So unfortunately, I have to say that as far as customer consideration, we just are admitting a loss, and we know there's going to be several we don't hit. But hopefully by working with the schools, maybe we'll make up a little bit of that gap.
We modified our hours after our city manager told us we could open May the 4th to have hours from 9 to 10 for senior citizens, 10 to 4 for the public, and 4 to 6 for the staff to work or clean after. And, our adaptions have been purchasing the Read Squared, purchasing Universal Class to put on our website for adults to use, the curbside pickup. We also purchased Zoom so that I could Zoom with the teenagers once a week. We've purchased shields and wiping supplies, masks, and hand sanitizer. More ebooks and audiobooks we've purchased on Libby and Overdrive. Our part-time staff were asked to stay home. So we're all trying to take up some slack here that we're not used to doing, but it's working.
I'm going to jump back in. Someone had a question about adult programs, and I'm curious to know, Karen, Tanya, if you guys are doing any. Because we've had to reinvent the wheel last minute, we've only focused on the kids stuff. Now, we do have some intentions of developing some of our programs for adults, but right now it's almost exclusively for kids. So I'm curious, and I thank you for asking that question. I already lost the name of who asked that, but are you guys doing anything for adults?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tanya, you want to go?
Oh, as of right now, we're not. We're kind of like you, we're focusing on the kids. I do run an adult book club, and I posed the question to them if they wanted to do Zoom meetings, and none of them wanted to do it that way. So I see us, if this goes on past the fall, I do see us probably implementing some kind of adult stuff, crafts or whatever we might come up with. I do see us doing some, but as of right now, we have not ventured into that.
Well, our Read Squared thing that we bought, it does have for all ages. So Terry plugged in some activities for them to do. Just basically like watch a movie that was based on a book, or, go wash your dishes, or go outside for a walk, read a book from the book club list, just some fun things. And we've had positive feedback on that too, because they might win a cookie from the local cookie store, or, a Sonic drink or something. So they're happy to be involved in something. It's minimal, but it's there. And just like Tanya's group, they don't want to do Zoom. They don't understand it really.
Yeah.
That's really a good connection as well, rather transition for our next section there, where we're trying to look at connectivity. So how is the internet connectivity in your communities for the panelists, and has that sort of influenced your work?
Well, our internet's pretty good here in Watonga. Our Pioneer local internet place has a grant, has like a rural broadband grant, which has expanded the internet more for rural access, and our Wi-Fi's stayed pretty consistent. So we haven't had a lot of spikes and things like that, but it's pretty good internet.
I think, not being able to offer as much of the in-person public computers is really the saddest thing about how this is affecting public libraries. Because as I just said, we are the lifeline for so many people. And I'm not even talking just about our poorer population. We have some very affluent people who come in regularly to use our library internet and to use the public computers because they just don't have those things or access to good internet at home. And we did immediately buy a bunch of access points to make sure our parking lots were well covered. But you think about people who are walking now that it's getting hot. They don't have a vehicle, even if they have their own device. They're not going to want to sit out in the hot sun and play around on their devices, do their unemployment or whatever. And some people don't even have those devices, let alone the know-how. I mean, we do so much assisting of people. I know all of you do that are in the public library world. And that's what hits me the hardest. And I hate that we aren't open because people vitally need that. But at the same time, we are a hotbed for this. If someone comes in and they've got this, I mean, they're going to be sitting and hanging out at a computer. They're going to be coughing, sneezing, hacking, licking their lips, touching their face, and then going and touching equipment. Unfortunately, the public computers we provide, I think, are one of the most dangerous things we provide in these COVID times. And it really, makes me sad to think about and I know that's where our customers who are getting frustrated are frustrated with is because they can't come in and use those things. So I don't know what the solution is, and I hope some of you have maybe had some other solutions or have some ways to maybe address that, because it is such a discrepancy now, and I think we're seeing a bigger divide in the haves and the have-nots because of COVID.
I'm kind of like Karen. Our internet is relatively pretty good. I have the people that come and hang out front and in the cars and all that, and I didn't experience anybody complaining that they were having trouble getting on, and believe me, they would have caught me at the store or something and told me. So I think ours was keeping up with everything during our 2-month closure.
Yeah, I'm going to switch it up a little bit here and create a quick poll to just ask our participants if they experience similar issues or not. So I have 2 questions here that I'm going to launch in a poll that just really ask: do you regularly experience internet disruptions that influence your work? And has internet access prevented you from doing programs? So I'm going to launch that program. That quick question there. I'm sorry, panelists, you're not allowed to vote. So, so we'll just give that a few moments, and it'll give our panelists some breathing room as well. So, and then once everybody has voted, I will share the results. So. Don't be shy. We are up to about 50% of votes. So hopefully we can get a very high response rate. Just give it another few moments. All right, that has been a full minute, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. There's our results. Based on the people on the call, it seems the majority of people haven't had too many issues, and the majority of people haven't had too many issues. The internet has not prevented too many from doing their programs. So that's a interesting finding, and I think it does sort of align with what the panelists were saying as well. So let's move to. I'll stop sharing that poll. let's move a little bit to the role of the library, and maybe the panelists can just talk a little bit about what are some of the big issues for your community right now.
All right. Well, I hate to always be going first here, so Tanya, Karen, just jump right in there. But I think for all of our communities, and we have a ton of little towns in our small area, it's funding, it's the economy. I mean, because things were already in decline when the pandemic shut everything down, so it's just gotten worse. And our cities, they're dependent upon sales tax. They're hurting. They aren't getting that. Here in McAlester, the only reason we're going to have fireworks on the 4th of July is because of donations from private citizens and businesses. I mean, it's just that dire. And I think it'll get worse before it gets better. We've had businesses closed. I think there are more that will close because people, myself included, are still reluctant to go shopping, go dining. So, people are going to need us more. And unfortunately, we're talking about connectivity, computers, and they're going to need that even more because they're not going to have money for buying stuff, so they may need more materials that they can get for free. They're going to need computer access or help with their applying for unemployment benefits, other things through DHS. And then those DHS offices in Oklahoma, we have a bunch in our area that are closing. So we're going to see people being told, oh, you just need to go online to get these benefits. They're going to be coming to us. And we're going to get log jammed pretty fast, I think, because of our restrictions we're going to have when we open. And normal times, I'd be thrilled about all this, but I actually am pretty worried right now because I do think we're going to get congested pretty fast and we just don't have enough space to make things available safely to people.
I was talking to Terry before this, and she said that our sales tax is down about 25%. So it's the same thing with what Michael said, and businesses are closed and people just can't go about their normal right now. Our oil and gas has bottomed out around here, which we had a lot of sand plants around this area, and people they're closing down, losing their jobs. It's affecting everyone, their jobs mostly. And so that's kind of what our big issues are right now in our community.
Yeah, I concur. That's basically what's going on around here. In our small town, we didn't lose any businesses, but most of them were shut down during about 2 months. And I know a lot of people losing their jobs due to the oil and gas. So I have had I've had probably more than average people coming in, filling out applications and stuff for unemployment and that kind of stuff. But I kind of felt like we were removed from it a little bit because we are out here, and in our county, I can't remember how many we had in Custer County. I know we've only had 2 cases in our town. So it almost kind of felt like we were removed from the situation a little bit, except for the fact that our town was pretty much closed up.
Yeah. Going back to the lack of access, some of our kids, when all this happened, spring break, it was right at the beginning of spring break. And so all the kids were at home and they had taken their Chromebooks home. And so I feel like, and then they got to keep them until just, I don't know, May, I guess in May. I guess it's already June, isn't it? In May. And so they did have some access, because Pioneer waived the hotspot fees and things like that for a while. So now they've given their Chromebooks back to school, but they did have a little bit of access there. I just wanted to put that in there.
Well, to follow up on that, then, given the issues that you have all raised, how are you, or how would you like, what kind of help are you sort of seeking, maybe from from partners, and how would you like to help?
Well, Don and Karen, you're more on the direct lines with programming, so I hope you'll go first here.
Well, I am all for anybody else coming in my library to do a program. I do 90 to 95% of all the programs here myself. One of my part-time people, she does some of the kid programming, but I do everything else. So coming up with ideas and planning it and all that gets really tiresome after a while. So anytime somebody comes to me and offers to do a program, I pretty much jump on it. I do have a great OSU extension lady that will come and do anything that she can whenever she can. So I like to utilize her as much as I can. But I'm all for email me, text me, call me, any way you can get a hold of me. I am going to listen to a program if you've got one.
Yeah, we've used the OSU extension aid, the education part of that for years. I'll just say, here's our theme, what can you do? And she usually comes up with something for both, children and teens usually, and adults too. She likes to come and do adult programming. Also reach out to our local businesses. We didn't really reach out for monetary donations this year because, just cash, because of the way everybody's all having their own problems, but they are providing, coupons for free games of bowling or a free snow cone or, just to help us out with the kids. So that's how the local people are doing it.
Yeah, I think the OSU Extension offices are the perfect example of what to us is an ideal partner. Because they're number one, they're there. They come in, they do the work, they present the programs, they pre-package it, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to do it ourselves. Gives us a change of pace. But I think what's really important when you have partners doing programs and why it is so vital is we're librarians. We know a lot, but we're not scientists, we're not historians, we're not writers. We're not philosophers, craftsmen, you name it. We may have some skills in those things, but that's not our area of expertise. But we need those people with the expertise to step up and partner with us because, especially we think about kids. That's where all of our hearts is. And some of these kids, they may not have anyone in their life to show them these things. They may not even know these things are out there. And in my mind, the dream partnership is when we can look forward in 20 years. And if there's a kid that comes back to our community and says, hey, guess what? This is what I've done in my life. I went to college and this is what I'm doing because I went to this program at your library one day. I didn't even know this was a possibility. I didn't know this kind of work existed. I didn't know such things were there because we never see those in our small towns. We just don't have the access, or we just don't see a whole lot of variety. But to see someone who could totally have their life transformed because of what they were exposed to, that's why we need the outside partners. And for any of you who are on this chat that are looking for ways to partner with libraries, we are hungry because that is the difference we're trying to make in people's lives. We understand that literacy isn't just about learning in books now. It's about transforming lives and ways of thinking and putting people on a path toward that continued knowledge, continued learning that will, they will then pass on to others. So I feel like I'm getting on a soapbox there, so I'll just shut up there.
Well, I'm going to deviate a little bit again and just put out another poll for our let me see here. I'm gonna share another poll, the second poll. All right, this one is just really gonna ask again the same question that we've been asking our panelists. I know the questions are gonna force you to pick one or the other, and probably it'll be yes to all of these, but it's an informal, unscientific poll. So I just really want participants to answer these questions. What is impacting your library the most Is it more issues of funding that have been there before COVID, or is it more COVID related? And what type of help would you like? Is it more program ideas or more money? Of course, we all like to have more money, but if you had to choose one over the other. So I'm gonna give that just a few moments. All right, we have about 65 people, 65% of people have voted. I'm gonna give it about 10 more seconds, and then we come up to a minute. Then I will share the results. All right, here is what 75% of the people voted. So as far as what's impacting the library the most, more people are saying COVID-related issues are really what are impacting the libraries right now. And as far as what's needed more, of course, I realize that question number 2 is not probably fair, but because programs do need money, but it seems like more people are looking at programming ideas. So again, I can't underscore enough those who are on the call that can offer some of these program ideas. Please feel free to put your details there. And at the wrap up, I'll also give our contact as a Spotty Rain group that we'll be able to send out resources to all the people who are registered as well. So looking at the time, and especially because some of the other questions that we have for the panelists around community partners have sort of started to be answered already, I think I'm going to switch real quickly to the questions that attendees have put into the window there. I know that one of the questions that was put in earlier by Amy White is rural and small libraries. How do you deal with spacing folks out in small spaces? Right now, a lot of libraries are doing curbside pickups. So panelists, how do you envision that happening, being able to actually space people out as required per COVID regulations?
We have a couple locations where we're only going to be able to allow maybe 2-3 people in at a time. And basically, the staff are going to have to have a method, of, person in purple shirt, bald head. Well, that might be a little offensive to some people, not to me. But, some people, just some way of marking this person came in and this is the time limit. And, we're just going to have to turn people away if too many come in. There's just no easy way, no way probably is going to avoid confrontation, I think, to avoid having that conversation at least once or twice a day. Oh, sorry, we've reached our maximum capacity. You'll be able to come in 15 minutes or when someone walks out the door.
Have a login sheet at the door. We hate that we want people to sign in, but we also wanted to put what time they're there so we'll know who has been there longer, so we can tell them to ask them to leave. I mean, it's the same way,
Yeah. Now we're trying to avoid, I think the reason we wouldn't want to have them sign in, we don't want a record of who was in. So we're trying to make sure people will just write down vague things that couldn't be tied to one person.
Okay.
That's why I used the example of, purple shirt, but even a bald head, that could start to get identifying, because if the police or someone who has no business comes snooping or gets a hold of that record, we are concerned with that. But I think there's some really general ways, person with mustache and red shoes, red sneakers. I think there's some things we can do. And we haven't opened yet, so we're probably going to have to adapt as we go. There's probably some comments coming in with some better recommendations than what we're doing.
Some good
ideas. We
ideas
haven't gone live yet.
I haven't come across that problem yet. I mean, we equipped the library for it before we opened up. We took out anything that where the kids could congregate, or, you know, we separated our chairs. We cut back on our computers and their time limits. But right now, the foot traffic in the library is almost nil. I mean, if I'm not getting a whole lot of foot traffic in the library. And when they do come in, most of them, a lot of people are still wearing their masks. So, and they're staying 6 feet apart, especially like at the checkout desk and stuff like that. So I haven't had to turn anybody away or anything like that yet.
Right. We did the same thing. We moved chairs out.
Mm-hmm.
We only have 2 computers right now that are available, and they're far apart. So we're kind of the same way.
So in that same light, how have you been dealing with checking out things like newspapers and magazine, allowing people to stop in and so on? How has that been an issue, or how have you dealt with that, given that access is still a bit limited?
I'm sorry. My magazines haven't been checked out in years. With everything digital, I would be happy if they just got rid of my magazine. So I haven't had any problems with that.
Yeah. As soon as they come back in, we wipe everything down with the disinfectant, and then we quarantine everything for I think 3 days.
That's what we do, yeah.
Yeah, I think common thread, you know, we're not going to have scene where people can just sit and just really get into stuff. But if they take something out and bring it back, it's going into quarantine for 72 hours before our staff can handle it.
Right.
Well, the other question, and I think I would like to also ask this question to everybody on the even our attendees. If you can type this response in your in the chat box, but I'll post it first to the panelists. How have you, do you feel that the patrons are suffering sort of from virtual burnout? Because we all talk a lot about doing Zoom and doing virtual speakers and so forth, but are your patrons suffering from virtual burnout?
Oh, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah, we haven't had contact, well, and especially not being on front lines, I don't think I can answer that because we haven't even had any anecdotal reports coming in yet.
I have heard through the grapevine some parents that, you know, are limiting their kids to screen time. So hopefully they're not limiting them to our screens. You know, I think that that's a very big and real problem out there with kids anyway. So I don't know if it's hurt us or not, but I have heard that comment in our community.
And there's just a couple of things we're offering anyway, you know, the performance, and then I go on there and read a book once a week to them. So that's really all we're offering. Now, the thing that we're doing, they can get on and log in their things, but that doesn't take very long.
Right.
It's really amazing the amount of people in the chat that have been agreeing that they're experiencing they're noticing some sort of virtual burnout from their patrons. To stick a little bit with that sort of virtual conversation again, how have you been able to count virtual participants, virtual patrons? Because it's easy to, or at least easier to count people who are coming into the door of your library, but how do you do that with people who are engaging with your library virtually?
You know, our reporting is pretty robust. You know, we have good counts on how many people are using our Wi-Fi. I honestly haven't paid too much attention. It really isn't, when I glanced at those numbers, they weren't as high as what I thought they might be, because I didn't know how it would work. They can't come in and use the library, but they can sit outside in the parking lot. So we have seen a decline, I think is what it was, in our Wi-Fi, but not as bad as I might have expected. Our downloadable products are their circulation has increased by nearly 40%. And then our databases, without school in session, they've taken a bit of a hit. Some people on our ancestry genealogy databases were coming into the library to use those. They've taken a hit, but have still stayed pretty, they haven't gone down probably more than 25–30%, I think, is on most of those.
Well,
so as far as those services, programming, I can't speak to programming yet because I haven't gotten any reports on that.
well, our Read Squared that we're using does provide numbers, of course, because they're registering. But I know when Adrienne, the youth consultant at ODL, she said the survey this year will not be stressing numbers. It will be stressing our experiences, really, like we're talking about today.
Our program also counts the registrations. We're using Beanstack. As far as like our story times and those kind of things, there was talk that they would, maybe count the views and the likes, shares, that kind of stuff for numbers. But I don't know if that was a for sure thing yet.
Well, I'm cognizant of the time, so I'm going to ask one last question for our panelists before we start wrapping up. But we talk a lot about programming and partners and so on. Can you talk a little bit just about briefly in terms of what are libraries looking for in the program partners, and how can community partners actually connect with rural librarians?
Well, I think I shared earlier kind of what I feel is the ideal partner. Pre-packaging things, bringing in an area of expertise, something that a lot of our people may not get a chance to see in normal activity. And if you were to contact me, I would say, I do have a programs person, but also contact our library managers. Like Tanya was saying earlier, I think it's true probably of every library staff member that's on this webinar. We are eager for people to work with, and we want to get those calls. So just reach out to us.
I think the school has been a good partner with us too. They even asked me to write a letter to put in their take-home packets at the end of the year. And then I handed everything out through the lunch line. So the school is a big partnership with us.
Yeah, it is with us too. I agree. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up to the hour, and I feel terrible to be the one to have to bring the conversation to a close, but I think we're really having a lot of great conversation here. And we do have also a lot of great conversation taking place in the chat window there as well. So let me just bring us to a close. I think we have about a minute or so left for the webinar to say thank you so very much to our panelists, Tanya, Michael, and Karen, for sharing your experience and your expertise and helping situate the conversation. Thank you again to the attendees, especially because for participating in the chat window and asking questions throughout. We had a really lively conversation, background chat in the chat window. We'll try to export all of those as well and make them available during the recording, because I think there are a lot of really good resources that have been shared there. I saw a lot of our OSU colleagues on the in the webinar as well. Some have been giving resources and also participating in the conversations. Thank you for that. And I saw some of our board members for our grant that were also chiming in on a lot of conversations. So again, thank you everybody for that. We don't have to end this conversation here. The webinar, the live version is coming to an end here, but please join our listserv because we do have conversations that are happening there. We try to send out resources. And we promise we're not gonna be spamming you with anything for sale by any means. and we try to be respectful of your email account and not send out too many things. So do join that. We have opportunities that you can use to apply for mini grants. We're going to be talking about those more in the follow-up emails. We have webinars that are archived on our website, which is also where this one is going to be housed. We have sort of some asynchronous conversations that are happening on Flipgrid, where you can actually talk with other librarians, talk with our panelists and other people that have been involved in this call. So please participate there. We'll put all this information, again, a lot of it in the email for that. You'll also be receiving a feedback form. So please let us know what you thought of this, what other questions you might have for us, maybe what other webinars you like to have, and what type of programs that you like to have. Will be, we are a good resource. We can connect you to a lot of other people, especially at OSU and broadly, both nationally and internationally, for different programs. So please do feel free to ask us questions on that. So again, thank you everybody for participating in this. Let's continue the conversation after this. Feel free to join us on our Twitter account, on our Facebook, and also joining our listserv. So we'll be sending all that information in a follow-up email. So with that, I would like to say thank you everybody again for participating, and a special big thank you to Tanya, Michael, and Karen for joining us live for this webinar. So I'm going to stop the recording at this stage, but I'll keep the webinar channel live for a little bit longer, just in case there are people who want to stay a little bit behind and have conversations. So I'm gonna stop that for now,